Chapter 4. Nate. He didn't want to notice the perfect O her plush lips made as she said her name, but he couldn't control it, or the immediate reaction his body had at the sight. Nate froze, jaw clenching as he fought to control the blood rush coursing to a very distinct place. Jo leaned closer, tightening her grip. His gaze darted to those jade eyes staring up at him, vibrant and sparkling with hidden mirth. He'd always had a weakness for green eyes, and women in barely there red bikinis. He jerked back, shaking free of her hold. Jo folded her lips together for a moment, holding back a smile, then licked them slowly, a single brow arched.
You have a name?
Nate frowned, cleared his tight throat, and nudged his chin in the direction of her jet ski. I said, "Good day, Miss Carter."
No fun.
She sighed with a pout, then smirked.
You know I can find out if I want to, right?
She can't seriously be. Nate shook off the thought and pushed his brows together in question. You wouldn't be implying what I think you're implying, would you? Her smile widened with an unspoken challenge.
What if I am?
Nate straightened his spine and crossed his arms over his chest, funneling his disbelief into a stern, scolding expression instead. Breaking into a government database is a federal crime, he said calmly, the edge of a threat laced through his tone. Class B felony, punishable by up to 20 years in prison. The flames in the centers of her eyes brightened.
Only if you get caught.
Unbelievable. She's unbelievable. No shame, no remorse, no. Can I tell you a secret, Miss Carter? Nate murmured, not really sure why he was playing along, but the words tumbled from his lips before he could stop them. Her eager expression intensified. An almost childlike sense of wonder was etched into the grooves of her face as she nodded. He leaned in, just to prove to himself that he could, and forced his rebellious pulse to remain even. Her auburn hair tickled his face as he pressed his lips close enough to feel the heat of her sun-kissed skin. Something in his chest hitched, but he didn't back down. Eventually, you always get caught. She sucked in a breath. He leaned back just enough to stare into her eyes, not at all liking the defiant golden sparkles dancing at the center of her irises, flickering like sunshine through a dark forest, brilliant and burning. The air between them was tense, a silent battle of wills, neither backing down, both fighting for the win. She opened her mouth to speak, drawing his gaze, and static crackled loudly over the two-way radio.
Parker, Alvarez, do you copy? Are you there? Satellite feed says Carter should be in sight momentarily.
Nate snapped upright. Jo didn't move except to perk one corner of her plush lips, watching him unflinchingly, victory simmering in her eyes.
Parker, are you there? Do you copy?
She turned her head toward the sound and shrugged.
You gonna get that?
Nate took a slow step back, eyes never leaving her for a second. His gun was 4 feet behind, resting next to Leo's on the control panel. But his phone was on the table, along with his notes, all within reach of her thieving hands. A pulse of static coursed through the radio again. Nate lunged for it. Pressing the button to speak, he kept a laser focus on Jolene Carter, trouble personified. Here, boss.
Parker, do you see Carter?
A small smile danced across her lips as she mouthed, Parker. Nate stifled a groan and turned his attention to the horizon. A white spot in the distance caught his eye, bright against the endless blue. Carter is in sight, I can confirm. Carter and Ryder are in sight. Jo spun. Her entire body froze for a moment, and then in one deft move, she flung herself over the edge of the boat and landed smoothly on the jet ski. Her long, toned legs straddled the seat, muscles clenched tight. Her chest was angled forward, fingers gripping the handles. A gust of wind blew her hair to the side, revealing the graceful curve of her neck. She revved the engine once. Nate jolted at the sound.
Anyone tell you it's not polite to stare, Agent Parker?
He gritted his teeth. Anyone tell you it's not polite to trespass?
Sure. I just don't care.
She shrugged and flashed him a grin, her gaze sliding down his chest all the way to his toes and back up, pausing on the collar of his shirt. Amusement obvious, she pulled her lip in and bit down as the corners of her mouth stretched wider. Finally, she found his eyes again. That damn sparkle was back.
That's the difference between you and me, Agent Parker. I'm fully aware that some rules are made to be broken.
Joe revved the engine again, but this time raced forward, completely in control, as she circled his boat at a breakneck speed, bouncing over waves, creating wakes that made the floor shift beneath him. But Nate had grown up on boats. On the weekends, his father had taught him how to sail. So he planted his feet wide and kept his arms crossed, perfectly balanced as she completed the arc and sent a splash over the edge, wetting his feet.
See you around, Agent Parker,
she called over his shoulder as she sped away. Nate watched her go, drawn like a moth to a flame. Her golden skin was radiant in the afternoon sun, and that auburn hair blazed like the streaks of a fiery comet, flying in the wind. The bright red bottoms of that barely there bikini goaded him. The sound of her laughter was a soft echo in his ears. Dangerous. 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 The snap of a door caught his attention. Nate blinked and shook his head, tearing his eyes away and turning his attention to his partner, the one slowly crawling up the stairs, clutching his stomach. "Oh man, that rocking did not help things," Leo muttered as he stumbled his way to the control panel and collapsed back in his chair. Nate jerked his head in the direction of the yacht, growing larger on the horizon, and then tossed the radio in his hand to his partner. "Carter and Ryder are here. Boss is on line 1. After a juggle or two, Leo secured his grip on the radio and turned the wheel to give them a better view of the approaching vessel. He grumbled not so silently the entire time, but a bad round of food poisoning mixed with some seasickness wasn't enough to stop Leo. The two of them had been through worse together, much worse than this. Nate dropped back into his seat by the table and grabbed the binoculars again, shifting his notepad closer. One quick glance through the lenses told him that it would be a few minutes before the yacht was close enough to get a good look at anyone and anything on board. A sweet, buttery scent wafted into his nose. He sighed and dropped the binoculars to his lap as his gaze fell on the bag of... what the hell has she called them? Koopas? Resting open on the other side of the table. His stomach growled. The muscles in his abdomen clenched. Nate swallowed and frowned. No, stop. He shook his head and looked away. This wasn't a bake sale, it was a stakeout. And those were from a wanted criminal, a brazen wanted criminal. Sure, Carter and Ryder had never been violent. They had no reason to attack an FBI agent, had never hurt civilians, and had never been suspected of so much as firing a gun. Their skills were different, more refined, steeped in subterfuge rather than threats. The mobsters they worked with were the ones who relied on terror, on violence. But there was a first time for everything. A first time. A breeze brushed softly against his cheek, carrying that delectable fragrance to his nose once more, making his mouth water and his empty stomach ache. It had been a few hours since his last meal, and it could easily be a few more hours until his next. Nate's defenses lowered as his hunger rose. One bite couldn't hurt, he reasoned, as he slid his palm over the smooth surface of the table and dipped his fingers into the bag. But he paused, focus darting to the woman in the distance who was now standing at the edge of the dock, watching the horizon. She was bold, that was a given. Curious, maybe. Taunting, definitely. But not threatening. The cookies were nothing more than a way for her to get inside his head, a way to distract him. And apparently they were working. That's it. Nate defiantly grabbed a cookie, determined to meet her silent dare head-on. He was done going in circles, done with the mind games. And if they were really contaminated, then, well, he deserved what he got for not reading the suspect clearly. He bit down and groaned, closing his eyes. Oh, God damn, this is good. Not that he'd ever tell her. Jolene Carter, daughter of his target, expert hacker, criminal herself. Nate sighed as the image of her plump, rosy lips filled his mind. Jo.